I can go, will go, and have gone anywhere on Earth within 24 hours, even into war zones. Get me the flight and a safe place to stay, and I will join your project there. The way I usually describe myself is either a writer or a consultant, because that is most of what I do. I have written for decades and taught people better ways of starting farms and homesteads for years, often by traveling out to them and working with the general laborers and tradesmen to start their builds. I started traveling when I was very little, family flights between DC and Texas. Most of my time is spent researching and analyzing, cross-referencing, then drawing up and writing about and explaining innovative designs. When I was a child, I didn't have any grand plans. I just built custom things with Legos and liked playing computer games. I tried programming once in elementary school and learned more about it later on, and I found that it was fairly easy, but I preferred to draw and write, using user-friendly interfaces to help me bypass having to write every line of code. I would later become somewhat of a user-friendly interface because I helped others to bypass the trickier parts of putting their dreams together in buildable formats others could understand. I began helping them understand in seconds what it took me years of study, trial, and error to figure out. I learned that some truths and solutions had been downplayed or even hidden in an effort to maintain profits from entrenched, obsolete, harmful industries and systems. So I also studied and determined ways of helping workers in those industries transition into better ones, rather than just whistleblowing or introducing disruptive technologies. When I was growing up, I read lots of books. They were very often set in remote parts of the world. That is where the amazing discoveries and construction projects and the legends all were. So I decided I would start exploring those places, not just going to tourist sites when I traveled. It seemed like all the best new technology was being found or developed out there, so I thought, since I really want to work on new technology, I need to get out to where it is being made and tested. I tried at first to convince my friends and fellow students to team up with me so we could go on expeditions together and share resources so we could launch startup companies, but they wouldn't budge. As my ideas and writing built up, so did my first solo travels. I started by crossing the Texas-Oklahoma state line in my high school car, and then driving across several states on my first trip to the West Coast where I enlisted. The military got me out to even more states, as well as to other countries and continents, and my writing, studies, and inventing continued, even while I was deployed. A few years later, I completed my service contract and continued my world travels, now entirely on my own, and free to develop any itinerary and device out there. My first childhood art and invention ideas were for weapons, such as hidden guns, military vehicles that looked like normal cars, and lifelike robots that could blend into normal society, probably because I'd watched a lot of G.I. Joe cartoons. I soon realized all my creative writing and research could be fused into a single timeline and series of novels, and that I would rather develop healing inventions instead of weapons. And that was when my military base designs were revised into being the research station my friend named Industry. I saw that a lot of people, billions, were now seeing very calming and therapeutic effects from holistic, including tantric science, as well as from the adult industries, and I thought, well, I can either get my PhD in computer science and just keep watching those fields get built up, or I can put my studies on the side somewhat and be part of that buildup. At first, I went to additional colleges and programs to learn how to combine things such as computer science and sustainable agriculture, and I tried work in several job categories to get hands-on time with all that. But then I realized there were many more ways I could combine, reimagine, and share what I had learned, tried, and seen working for people far better than the norm. The culture of industry I write about is one of those things. It combines all I have learned and witnessed working and is made available because of the websites I have built to anyone anywhere who is interested in realizing similar things. I tried to get jobs at all the big name companies and then funding from all the wealthy individuals, but they didn't respond to me. so I decided I'd better try starting something and keep refining and presenting my pitch while I travel and innovate alone. I tried starting a security company, then a shipping container farms company, then a consulting company, and just kept going, working normal jobs to make ends meet all the while, using almost all my free time to find and try monetizing each new idea. I also tried investing in various ways, starting with stocks, then electronic indexes, and even cryptocurrency and high-speed trading. For years, nothing worked out, and that kept me hungry, moving, and struggling. But that hunger and struggle kept me too poor to afford parties, women, and bars. So all I could do was eat, exercise, think, write, make calls, and sleep. Over decades, that became the 2,000-page website and dozens of company plans and hundreds of game and movie drafts you see on my site today. It brought all my ideas into the design and presentation stages, and even wrapped up my novel writing for now. My poverty and isolation had been key. What others warned about actually made me accomplished and strong. There were many distractions along that journey too. Injuries, bad doctors, incompatible roommates and relationships, even threats, and the loss of some of my vehicles and hardware. I pressed on. I knew and saw, the more I worked on all my creations, that they had the potential to unite, stabilize, and heal countless people. That by itself was rewarding enough for me to carry on, and I started having dreams of being in the finished research station I designed, with the great people destined to meet and work with me there. When I showed people along the way my sketches, maps, and business plans, nobody was interested. But when I showed them photos of all the places around the world that lifelong project of mine had taken me, everyone was interested. It's important to listen to feedback like that, and when I invested more time into providing recent and relatable content on my YouTube channel and other accounts, that's when things finally started to take off. I also benefited from noticing and accepting that everything in the first phase of my life had been bound to just toughen up and launch me. And everything in the second phase of my life had been bound to just let me keep working and traveling, completing my writing and designs. I stopped trying to launch startups and relationships, and instead doubled down to tell more of my story, to complete the rest of my writing, and to become a better consultant. It wasn't about catering to what people had said, as input was mostly erroneous in that first phase, which prompted all of my studies and innovations, and quite neutral and non-committal in the second phase, which is why it seemed to some people like I was just focusing on my travels, when in reality I was still searching for funders and teammates. I began seeing successes when I listened to myself, and to other discredited or disregarded pioneers and innovators, the independent researchers just like me. The Innisfree project wasn't about finding the best way for me to make more money, but what the best way was for me to influence and help other good people. That is based in a variety of proven sustainability technologies and practices, but includes focusing those things here by Innisfree before we go on trying to be multiplanetary. The latter is the basis for the real-life Starfleet I drafted plans for, including many ship designs and its mapping campaign. And the former is the basis for my first forward operating base being redesigned until it became the research station and healing center called Innisfree. When I started Innisfree, I thought, there's probably no way one guy can start his own research station, let alone one with this many businesses based out of it and innovations. I wasn't that crazy. I just wanted to organize all my ideas, make my writing readable, and honor everyone and everywhere I had learned and healed from. Continuing to explain and pitch my ideas, I even presented them in a speech to successful businessmen, professors, Olympic athletes, and military officers at Dartmouth, among other places. I told them the overall thinking and trajectory, and the remote location I had chosen. They seemed interested, but probably thought I was too bold or even crazy. But I had formalized and shown my life's work to them and had hundreds of successful trips and expeditions under my belt by that time, so that was okay. I then started helping people start and manage their own greenhouses and farms, and moved down to Central America to get a 500-person off-grid ranch neighborhood going. Another next step along my way to being fully remote and town-sized, no longer just working on small homes and gardens. I'd also gotten used to living and working in Montana and then Alaska near the Arctic, so I was both scaling up and conditioning for what was to come. But doing things like this requires you to work very hard. It requires tough choices, thick skin, a devotion to your vision, self-validation, endurance, and sacrifice. What does that mean? Well, I had to work 2 jobs sometimes, or complete courses online, or pull lonely all-nighters, and even deal with bouts of homelessness and ruthless debt collectors. I had to give up on any form of a social life for years at a time. I had to learn to master my own emotions and release them, without any help beyond an occasional text message from a longtime friend or two. I took gym memberships so I could shower and stay healthy. I went to food banks so I could eat. When my only computer broke, I found sheep and donated ones. When those broke, I found more. I learned how to be my own tech support. I learned how to not rely on anyone. I worked or went to class during the day and wrote and coded at night, 7 days a week, no holidays or birthdays, all the time. I briefly had girlfriends, and the only one who lasted through my busy schedule was the one who decided she liked doing the writing with me. We shared the same vision for how we wanted this life's work to all turn out. Basically, work your butt off. Fully commit to what you know is your purpose, and only make time for the people who feel the same calling and are already headed that way too. You then will achieve in each year what it takes some others many years or a whole lifetime to achieve. If they're putting in 40-hour weeks and you're putting in 80 to 100-hour weeks, and both of you are working on the same kind of thing, do the math. You'll achieve your goals sooner. Every day I'm working on one of my companies or on one of the areas in industry. I shut out all distractions, no matter what they may be demanding, and get more work done toward my goals. The only people I respond to are those who are helping. And when the time comes for me to be all the way out there at the main site, I'll stay there, homeless once again, using the research station as my home and my home office. And I'll be happy that I got used to this much work and remoteness over decades. Yes, I absolutely worry about fatigue and emotional moments. No one should put this many hours into work. People should not work this hard. It's very painful. It hurts my brain and my heart. I don't recommend it for anyone. Thankfully, I had years of ramping up into this, and I'll have years for easing back down from it. But staying realistic, if I didn't work this hard on my dream community and startups, it is very likely they would die, just like my first few startup attempts did, when it was not possible for me to work this often or hard on them. Things ended up costing more and taking longer than I originally prayed and thought. Some things took 3 trips, for example, not 1, or I'd get delayed or stuck somewhere out there for months longer than I had budgeted or planned. It took all my strength, money, resolve, and resourcefulness to press on. It became clear that if I didn't take more time off from my go-between jobs and put the rest of my time and money in, my life's work was going to die, and my panic attacks would have returned if that had been the case, if I'd given up and failed. So I ended up putting all my time and money in and borrowing money for rent from friends. That was very hard for me to do, to ask for. I had always been taught to just suck it up and do things on my own, but I'd wanted more of a team and funders for so long, so it was right that I ended up being guided to start seeking money and other support from people. If you want to make breakthroughs and do anything innovative, that's just how it's going to be at first. There will always be significant risks involved, and you will have to take big chances in order to have big positive outcomes. If the outcome is exciting enough, then taking big risk is worthwhile. And nothing excites me more than this off-grid, innovative sustainability project of mine. Now, naturally, once I started, I tried to reduce the risks along my path. I tried to boost the probability of success, but I always accept that there are risks I must face, and that some of those risks will remain. I guess I'm just constitutionally geared to keep going, to keep adjusting and pacing myself until I get it done. Sure, when things don't go well, that is discouraging, and my enthusiasm fluctuates, but I keep going. I'm not focused on feeling good all the time. My focus is on building this new station, healing center, and pollution-free city, this proof of concept the world really needs. Seeing the budget getting fully used from month to month and the twists and turns and return trips along the way is a point of concern, but all we can do is just maintain our general heading and learn to surf life's waves. One of the toughest decisions I ever faced was in 2011. I was facing an illegal fine, and if I paid it, I wouldn't have had enough money left to move to where I needed to be to develop a major foundational part of industry. Thankfully, I weighed my options. I realized I'd be too remote for them to chase down, and spent those funds on the prototype and relocation. I certainly have lost many battles, perhaps too many to count. A corrupt court put a lie on my permanent record. A couple heartless landlords and banks wiped out my once perfect credit scores even during the lockdowns when everyone was struggling and innocent. And so many times justice was not done and never came. All I could do was bite my tongue and continue. Some people have asked me, why this project, this goal, this level of difficulty? For me, it isn't about doing something just because it is difficult. I just keep noticing signs and other indicators that all I have learned, seen, and dreamed of is still and always pointing this way. My mindset is to accept that some things don't work out, and they weren't meant to, and that I have still learned from all of those moments. I noticed that failure here and there never stopped me, and that it often led to accelerated networking, trying, learning, and growth. My first 3 startup companies failed: security, container farms, and consulting. I just didn't have the manpower to scale and market them in time. But they led to almost countless travels, realizations, and other successes, and left me free to keep going anywhere and doing whatever I wanted. I keep trying every year to get to Argentina and Antarctica. Every year since 2011, I have failed. But in 2020, I got within a few days of getting there, alone, and with almost no money. I made it thousands of miles farther and closer than I ever had before. And I was able to hold on out there for a year. I almost made it last time. So I keep trying, seeing incredible progress and fewer and smaller failures. I still have a little fear, a little doubt, and times when I cry and ask for help. I keep working on this in spite of all that, because it is important enough. The fear, I just let motivate me to keep polishing and revising my route and design. Better and better until we're there. For anyone interested in venturing out like this, have a high pain tolerance. Know that your initial happiness and excitement will fade with all the setbacks, but that it will return to you as you push and work and innovate through them. Just keep going. The most difficult part for me, seeing it all come together, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, always paused in intervals by fools here and there, and seeing my dream team blink in and out of my proximity taking multiple appearances before they finally show up and tell me who they are. In other words, wading through the almost moments and worrisome dry spell intervals. That's the most difficult part for me. As a CEO, even of a small company or endeavor, you have a filter where all your company's worst challenges are coming to you. You don't spend your time focusing on the successes, you spend it finding solutions to the problems. But if you focus on making the absolute best product or service you can, and in my case that is a more complete view of history in such a way that allows me to better consult and teach people how to heal themselves and be self-sustaining, and if your clients love you for that, you will see and have a much higher chance of succeeding. I had to distance myself from a lot of incompatible or toxic people along the way. For a man who has always preferred and sought compatibility and mutual healing, that hurt, but it let me prioritize and help the people who mattered and got it, and that has really saved the day. There's still plenty who don't get what I'm doing, but I get that. I don't expect them to see what I see after decades of sometimes solo research and testing. Another important and useful and tricky thing to figure out is knowing the difference between wishful thinking and a realistic and helpful idea you can actually achieve. That is why I keep studying and seeking more teammates, not trying to go to Argentina and Antarctica immediately or alone. Also, accept when all signs are telling you it isn't time to unite your team or soul family. There are trials, hardships that come first. And if you gather people too early, you will be pulled back apart by those things. Then there is the meditation and idea phase and designing, and you again need solo time for that. Let your people come to you and leave when they need to, and return to you when you all feel it is time to. As great as networking sounds, it is only good use of your time when you are ready to, when your initial struggles in designing are complete. And rather than reasoning by analogy, try to boil things down to their most basic elements or fundamentals, their most basic truths. That way you can see how they really work and then build up from there. More specifically, with regard to my life's work, I determined why some people kept doing what wasn't working, then who exactly even wanted what works, and then how I could help create and provide what works to those people who wanted it. It started with my writing, then talking with people at the different schools and sites I went to, and most recently via what I publish on my website, which includes the whole design for my city, and is free. If I had just made general comparisons to the USA or other companies when I was developing mine, I would have seen much more confusion, loss, and failure. If I had merely used analogies to see how well I compared to what was already established, I wouldn't have been innovating, or healing, or doing good writing at all. Anytime you want to make new and better things, the way to do it is by really analyzing what you were looking at and what you're trying to do until you boil it down to those most basic elements. That is where and when you can intelligently heal, teach, and build. And now is the time to do that thinking and take these risks, because later you have more obligations and can't take as many or as big risks. You'll have a family to take care of, for example, and so on. My head is often full of big ideas. It takes a lot of time each day to get them all written down or typed, sorted, labeled, and online. I don't think you'd want to be me. It's very difficult to turn this off. And when I have turned it off for too long, I got panic attacks. It isn't always fun. It has been a constant juggling act, and watering it down to repeatedly explain it to others before I had met the people who were ready to hear and understand all of it, that left me feeling very alone, overburdened, misunderstood, and held back. Going to space is exciting and does inspire a wonderful sense of adventure, but so can and does discovering, achieving, uniting, and improving or even restoring wonders right here. Plus, to go to other worlds too soon creates the same sorrowful disasters that trying to team up with people too soon has. That is why I, at least, must wait a bit and first make my station and community. Innisfree. Foundation first, then the next levels. We'll go to space when we aren't just rolling the dice about what we may find down there. All we will be doing in Innisfree is making things that our people love. That is what it's all about. Waking up and looking forward to your day, to the people and experiences and achievements in it, and to our future there and beyond. What will I do once there? Well, I'll enjoy it and have a lot of exercise, celebrations, and meals with my soul family. Then help them with their own great works and with their own great failures. Innisfree has always been intended to be a base of operations for us, after all. A place that not only heals us, but lets us go back out there to consult for and help heal others. Yes, I am quoting and paraphrasing some of this talk, and that's because these are wise remarks that don't need